Hey guys, this is Kim from Read It Again Bookstore, and today I'm talking Sadeqa Johnson. Hi.
Hey Kim, how are
Good,
you?
how are you?
Perfect.
Perfect. I gotta say, your lighting is perfect.
Oh, good. That's what I
Because
wanted to
you,
hear.
you got these little pretty, bright spots on your cheeks and your teeth. Yeah, it's perfect.
Perfect.
Um, okay, so I just finished your book and I loved it. I have to say that The Jailer is probably, out of all the books I've probably ever read, I hated him more than anybody else.
That's good. I did my
Yeah,
job.
you did your job. Yeah, I'm like, okay, he has to die. And I kept having that the chick song in my head, Earl had to die.
Hmm.
Yeah, that was playing through my head towards the end of the book, and I'm like, yeah, he needs to die. He needs to die badly and hard and often, like repeatedly. Okay, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, so I'm Sadeqa Johnson, the author of Yellow Wife. Yellow Wife is my fourth novel. I
Mm.
have three contemporary fiction novels: Love in a Carry-On Bag, Second House from the Corner, and Then There Was Me. It's my first time writing historical fiction, which was interesting, and I'm sure we'll get into that in our conversation. I currently live right outside of Richmond, Virginia, with my husband and three kids, two of which are still home doing virtual school. So it's been a bit of a challenge for me. They pop in anytime with crises that are not real crises, they're like teenage fake crises. And they expect me to stop working so that I could fix them and make lunch and, tend to all their needs.
Oops, I'm posting stuff and I misspelled something. So I'm putting links into the comments where you can buy Sadiqa's books. And let me do that again. You keep talking, and I will type.
Okay. All right.
Mhm.
What else do you want to know? So that was with me.
What did you do? What did you do before you wrote?
Oh, okay,
Before
good
you were a
one.
writer?
All right. So before I was a writer, I started off, I wanted to be an actress. That was
Oh,
my first thing. And I went to school. I went to Marymount Manhattan College in New York City, and I was a
mhm.
theater major for 2 years. And then I decided, I better switch majors so that I could actually get a job because New York City is expensive
It
and I
is.
need to be able to pay my rent. So I switched to communications and I got my first job in publishing. So in publishing, I was a publicist. I worked on the first three Harry Potter books, which was amazing. And I know we were just talking about the children's book section, so you may remember some of these authors that I worked with, like Dave Pilkey and Virginia Hamilton, Walter Dean Myers, Ruby Bridges. So those were some of the authors I worked with at Scholastic. And then I went over to Putnam as an adult publisher, which was like being going from like graduate school to undergraduate because it was so much more intense, and working with New York Times bestselling authors like Amy Tan and B.B. Moore Campbell and Catherine Coulter, Nevada Barr,
Wow.
Bishop T.D. Jakes. And so those were some of my clients. And publicity back then was, it was radio, film, and television. It was no social media. It was
Yes.
like trying to get people on the Good Morning America and the Today Show. So
Wow. Can you tell us about your book?
yeah,
Yeah.
of course. So
Mhm.
Yellow Wife is the story of Pheby Delores Brown. She is 17 when the story opens. She's a mulatto girl. She's the daughter of the master of the plantation, along with his favorite slave, Ruth, who is the medicine woman and the seamstress. Phoebe has been promised freedom on her 18th birthday. It's something she's always known. She was favored by the master's sister who never had children. She never got married. So she kind of took Phoebe on as a project. So she taught her to read and to write and play piano. Well, Phoebe is expecting to be free at 18 and move to Massachusetts and go to a school. Well, obviously, would I have a book if that happened? Well, it does not happen. Phoebe series of events take place, and she finds herself thrust into the world, to the
Mhm.
bowels of slavery. She ends up at the Lapeer jail, which is dubbed the Devil's Half Acre. There she catches the eye of the owner, the jailer who you were just talking about, who you hate, hate, hate.
I hate, hate, hate.
She catches his eye, and he makes her mistress of the plantation, of the jail, and
Mhm.
she constantly has to outwit him for survival every day for herself and her family.
So when I read your book, I didn't read the back. Sometimes I just like to jump in and experience it as it goes. And so, when you're reading a book and everything is going happy and you're like, something bad is about to happen. Otherwise, there wouldn't be a plot, like you just said. The thing is like, she's a slave. And even though she realizes later that she had a decent life, or in comparison, I was like not expecting a bad thing to happen because bad things were already happening. Do you know what I
Yeah,
mean? Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, it was like that. As I was writing the story, it was kind of like I just kind of felt like one thing after the next, after the next, after the next. I mean, I have to be honest and say that I really love reading page turners. Like,
Mhm.
when I pick up a book for myself, it has to do two things. It has to be a page turner, keep my interest, and entertain me, but I also need to learn something about craft. And so that's the way I approach writing as well, is I'm kind of writing for myself. Like I'm my first, reader, customer sort of thing. So I hope you felt that
Yeah.
as you were getting through the story.
Yeah, well, you normally when I have a book that bad things just keep happening, I do honestly put them down, but I was just so determined to find out what happened. Like I wanted the jailer to get his comeuppance. I just wanted to know. So I just continued, and oh, it was so good. Guys, you should buy this book. Seriously, everybody
Mhm.
buy this book. Can you do a reading for us?
Oh, I would love
Good.
to.
Here, let me switch this up.
All right. So, Yellow Wife, I'm just going to start right from the beginning. So, if there's anyone in the audience and you already have a copy of Yellow Wife, feel free to grab your book, grab a cup of tea, settle in, and I will read a little bit from Yellow Wife. Chapter 1, The Bell Plantation. Mama believed that the full moon was the most fertile night of the month, and that everything she touched held God's power. Each full moon, she dragged me out in the middle of the night with her to hunt for roots, plants, seedlings, and rare blossoms to use for healing. I did not understand why God's power could not be found during daylight hours, and as I trudged behind her, the March cold overwhelmed me. Even my thick wool shawl was no match against the country freeze. Fear of the woods made my feet clumsy, and I tripped over fallen sticks, scratched my shins on the spiky brush, and bumped my head on low hanging branches. Mama, on the other hand, moved with skill and confidence, like the earth parted a path and presented the way for her. Even in the dark, she knew where to stop for herbs and how to avoid the dangerous ones. We had only a small lantern to guide us, and when I asked how she knew where things grew, she responded, "My gut be my light." We slipped through the thicket, past the drafty cabins where the field hands slept on pallets stuffed with hay and husk. I heard dry coughs and a low whine from a hungry baby. Farther down toward the James River, we traveled through the clearing where we met on Sunday for church. Then over the hill along the side of the cemetery, peppered with sticks to honor our dead. As we traveled deeper into the woods of the plantation, the thick forest blocked the light of the moon. I could hear the growls and grunts of unseen animals and fretted over running into a hungry raccoon or red foxes or stepping on a poisonous snake. I tried to clear the worry from my mind as the land flattened out, but then something pricked my ankle. Before I could call out, Mama stopped suddenly and reached for my hand. "This here's a black walnut tree. Grow deep in the woods, so you gotta know where to look. Cure for most everything. Ever unsure, come seek this tree." Mama handed me the lantern, then pulled a blade from a satchel and severed a piece of bark. She brought it to her nose, then ran her tongue along the inside of it. "Her stain anything it touch. After we make a tea for Rachel, rest we used to dye those sheets for the nursery. Just hoping we ain't too late to save that girl." Mama reached into her bag and pulled out a red ribbon. Go on and mark it, so it'll be easy to find when you come without me. I reached up and tied the ribbon on a skinny twig, knowing I had no intention of roaming these woods without my mama. We stopped at the sick house on our way back home. That morning, Rachel, the house servant, had been moved from the big house to the sick room on account of her high fever. Even though Master Jacob's wife, Mrs. Delphina, knew Mama worked plants better than anybody, she refused to bring her up to the house to tend to Rachel when she got fevered with lockjaw. Rachel grew up on Mrs. Delphina's plantation and came with her to Master Jacob's as a wedding gift from her mother. Since Mrs. Delphina looked down on Mama's medicine, she called in a white doctor for Rachel, which Mama said was a waste of good money. He ain't know nothing about doctor and no field hands. And Mama was right. Now that the white medicine had failed, Mrs. Delphina had no choice but to move Rachel to the sick house. When we entered the room, even I could look at Rachel's pale body and see death coming for her. You ready to hot water? Asked the sick nurse, who nodded her head and pointed to the boiling water. Mama reached into a sack and pulled out the bark and leaves from the black walnut tree. Then she pinched off a sprig of snake root and crushed up the stems. Let it steep for about an hour. Then make her sip every time she opened her eyes. If she make it through the night, there be hope. Mama removed a few balms and poultices from her medicine satchel for the other patients. Then gently pressed Rachel's forehead with the palm of her hand and whispered, Lord, look on Rachel with eyes of mercy. Restore her to wholeness and strength. Thy will be done.
So we got to talk about all the research you did for this.
Yeah, it was fun. I would say
Yeah.
that's the way I would describe the research. It's like you don't know about these stories until you actually go looking for them. And when you look for one story, you get another story and another story and another story. And so I actually had to stop myself so that I wouldn't jump down rabbit holes going in different directions. I needed to really focus. So I started, I'll back up a little bit. I discovered the story. Yellow Wife is based on the story of Mary Lumpkin and the Lumpkin jail. And I discovered the story just going on a walk on the Richmond slave trail. I was there with my family and my friends, and there are 17 markers along the trail. And we came upon the marker that talked about the Lumpkin's jail. And it was described as the Devil's Half Acre, one of the most horrendous places on earth. And it was owned by Robert Lumpkin, who they called the bully trader. It said that he was one way in the, with the people that he's, the slaves and his business, but he was another way with Mary Lumpkin and the children. They have 5 children together. And I just kept picturing or wondering to myself, as a mother, as a wife, what was it like for Mary Lumpkin, seeing her fellow enslaved people being mistreated and their families being separated. The way they described the jail, the smells were horrific. And so I was wondering what it was like for her. And then what was it like for these children? Was she married to him for, survival? Was it love? And those were things that I was thinking about when I was writing Yellow Wife. So to research the story, I actually went to the Library of Virginia, which had a really good, extensive collection of books written about Richmond and slavery at that time. I was also able to find a lot of different periodicals, newspaper clippings and things of that nature. And I also went out to different plantations. So Pheby, her name, I actually found on a slave ledger in the kitchen house of a plantation here in Charles City, Virginia. And when I saw it on the wall spelled with a Y, I thought, ooh, that's her name. So just kind of going out and, as a writer, we have to feel it, taste it, touch it, be inspired by it. So I had to get out of the house. I couldn't stay behind my desk and just write this story.
I put together a list of books that you recommended at the end of your book, and I put it on a page to our website, and I put it down in the comments for anybody who's interested. And that it's a great list. It goes from like almost periodicals to, let's see here. Incidents of the life of a slave girl, Back of the Big House, Within the Plantation Household, Frederick Douglass, Known World, The Kitchen House, Wrench, Jubilee, Family, Homecoming. It's a great reading list.
Yeah. Yeah, it
Yeah.
really is. It was just fascinating. The research was really, really fascinating. And it's also disheartening because, these were people, these are our ancestors. These are people who actually went through these moments, who actually experienced the things that I wrote about. I write fiction. The book is fiction, but I try to stay as close to truth as possible. So there are scenes in the book that actually happen to real people. And it was important for me to do that because I felt charged with the responsibility of giving a voice to those who did not have a voice and really, really honoring as many ancestors as I could with this story.
I loved reading about how you went to the prison, or not, the jail, and you just felt like they were catching on to you and that you needed to tell their story.
Yeah,
Can
it
you?
felt like the ancestors were waiting for me. So when we were
Yeah.
when we were on the Richmond slave trail, the kids had gotten tired. So it's about 2.5 miles each way. So it would have been about a 5 mile walk. So we actually got in the car and drove to the end. And the end was the parking lot. Basically, it's a parking lot now, but
Mhm.
it's the space where the Lumpkins jail was. Right next to it, it was the sacred African burial ground, because when the slaves died, when the enslaved people died at the jail, there was no ceremony for them. They literally waited for the bodies to pile up and then they threw them into the ground. And so this area has been preserved in Richmond. But when we got there, you could feel this energy. Like you could just feel that the souls, you could feel it. The feeling was so strong that my friend who was with us, he pretended to play the African drums, and next thing you know, the children are dancing and we're all just kind of moving our body. And it was like this
Celebrating.
moment of
Yeah.
celebration where we were kind of embracing our roots and our heritage.
Oh,
And it just all wrapped itself around me. And I felt like when I got in the car, they got in the car with me. And it was a calling. It was, they were insisting on me
oh,
telling their story.
oh, I love that. I went to Cambodia once, and we went to this school that was turned into a prison. And I remember feeling something similar where I prayed to my grandmother to protect me. And I felt like she's passed away, and she just surrounded me with her love, and just, oh
Yeah.
my
Those
gosh,
moments are real. I mean,
they
those
are
moments
real.
are real.
They
Yes.
are. So what was it like writing historical fiction versus contemporary?
It was difficult at first because I had to get my brain right. I
Mhm.
was expecting one thing and it turned out to be something different. And so I knew it was going to be a shift for me because writing contemporary fiction, my first novel, Love in a Carry-On Bag, was a long distance love story. My husband and I started off in a long distance love story. So I knew that story.
Mhm.
Second House from the Corner is about a woman who was home with 3 kids and she felt like she was drowning in her skin. Well, that was me, and so I could relate to these other characters and their settings, because it was like I lived in Jersey, they lived in Jersey. But writing 1850 Richmond was different. I had to kind of world build in a way that I had not experienced before. So I
Mhm.
had to take a wall in my office where I literally cut pictures. If you look on the inside of Yellow Wife,
Mhm.
on the inside of the book, you see the jail, right?
Oh,
So
yeah.
this was a picture that was hanging up on my wall as I was writing so that I could feel every day like I was there. So
Mhm.
that was one of the pictures. And so there was a lot of world building that went into it. I also, I did a big research up front. And then when I started to actually write, when I actually started writing the story, I would hit roadblocks where I didn't know certain things. So for instance, in the beginning of the story, when Phoebe goes to dress Mrs. Delphina for the first time, I'm writing away and I'm like, oh shoot. Well, what did she have on and how many layers? And how do you tie a corset? Like, how do you lace a woman into a corset? So I
Uh-huh.
have to stop and then I research it and then, I write it down on paper and then I feel, I flow it into the story. So there's a lot of those stop and go moments where I would get to a section and I'm like, oh shoot, I don't know what cleaning products they used. You know, how did they wax shoes in 1850? So I would have to look it up.
Well, what about all the medicines? Where did all
Yeah,
that come from? Yeah.
research. I
Oh.
first of all, I will say that if it was another time, I would be the medicine woman. Not that I know how to do anything. I don't. But I feel like if I had been born some, at another time period, I would have learned it. I would have been with the medicine woman of, whatever neighborhood I lived in, and I would have been her apprentice. So I was very curious myself. And so that really is what drives a lot of my characters, is my own personal curiosity. I get to live vicariously through them. So Ruth being the medicine woman, I was able to do research on, what did they use to cure dropsy? And, what bombs did you use if your hands hurt from working in the fields and that sort of thing. And so, it was all just really curious research for me.
Well, the onion beside the bed, that was the one I was like, what? Like, I know
Yeah.
there's onion poultice.
Mm-hmm.
You know what
Mm-hmm.
I'm saying?
Yeah, I got you.
But I
Mhm.
never heard of the onion next to the bed. I thought was fascinated by that.
Yeah, I read that somewhere that you put the onion next to the bed and just
Bed.
kind of let it. Yeah.
Soak things up. And I also liked your musical references. So you would talk about how one character would sing the song, and then later in the book, a totally different place, different character would sing the same song. Did you have songs in mind when you were writing those?
I write to music. Music is a very important part of my writing process. So
Mhm.
most of the time when I'm writing Phoebe scenes, I'm listening to Chopin, because I needed that like 1800s
Mhm.
classical piano player. There's scenes when they go to church, those Negro spirituals that you hear, or even when people were singing as Phoebe was being, I don't want to give away the story, but
Mhm.
those scenes in the story. I found Negro spirituals from the 1800s in the Library of Congress. And so
Oh.
I was able to listen to them actually sing. And for me, it roots me in what I'm trying to write.
Mhm.
So if you feel the music in the story, it's because the music goes through me and
Was
into the
there?
story.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a connection thing for me, for sure.
Oh, it's perfect. You did amazing job of connecting what you read in research and music and put it into this book. Like, you did a great job.
Thank you.
I know you have you won some awards for this? Because I think you should.
I hope I will. Well, let's just
Uh-huh.
claim it. We will win some
Yeah,
awards for this. We will
I
definitely
think
win
you
some
should.
awards. Yeah,
Mhm.
they haven't started the submission process yet because the book is
Okay.
only it's still a little infant in my arms. It's only 2 months old. Yeah,
Oh.
so
Well, guys, we're selling this book like crazy. I've had requests for it. People not even knowing we're doing this event, and people have called up. By the way, we still have some in stock and at our store, and you can buy it off our website. I put a link down there for anybody. I also put a link to your website because there's some really fascinating information on your website.
oh, thank you. Yeah, I have a whole
Yeah.
page for a book club. So,
Yeah.
yeah, which that was really fun to create, is to be able to pull all those different pieces together. Because my thought was, book clubs always want a little extra. So I
Mhm.
designed a full page for them so that they could, talk about the book and have some
Did,
extra information.
did you write those questions, or did
I,
somebody
I
else?
work with we work together. So
Okay.
everything I do with my publisher is a
Mhm.
partnership. So
Mhm.
we go back and forth with each other. Yeah.
So what are you working on now?
Wouldn't you like to know?
I would. Yes.
So I'm in the beginning stages of another historical fiction. It takes
Good.
place in the 1940s, 1950s. And I can't
Mhm.
give you too much, but I will say it is the story of two women, one growing up in Philadelphia and one who moves to Washington, D.C. for school. And at the heart of the story, there's this thing that brings them together. But it deals with a lot of issues of, what motherhood meant, sexuality for women,
Mhm.
and just what that time period was like in this country. So, been doing a lot of research. I'm kind of so this book I didn't do the big research up front because it's a little bit closer to what I know about. And so
Mhm.
I kind of started the story and then I stop and research certain things as I go. So we'll see how this works for me. But I'm really excited about it.
Okay, so one of the things I actually really like about your book, And I know a lot of people like this, but you didn't do the two timelines. Like you stuck with one story and didn't jump back and forth. I just want to say I really like that. That wasn't actually a
Oh,
question. That was just me saying that.
oh, good. That was intentional.
Good.
Actually, when I was first thinking about the story, I was thinking I wanted to write the book from Phoebe's perspective and Essex's perspective
Mhm,
because of when they depart each other. Like I wanted to comment on what was happening.
mhm,
But my agent, she's so good. She was an editor for 20 years before she became my agent. So she's so
mhm.
good. And we've worked together on all four of my novels. And she's like, no, I think you want to keep it in Phoebe's perspective. I think you want to
Yeah.
keep your readers right up close and personal with her through the whole entire journey. And she was right because that works really well.
Are you ever think about, or are you going to do like follow-ups, like, following, oh gosh, what was is it Jenny, Jane,
July,
July? Yes. Like,
July.
I want to know what happened.
I
Oh,
know,
we
I do
can't
too.
talk about that, but
Kim,
yes,
I do too. I
I
do
want that
too.
story,
I
please.
don't know. I don't know, but I once I find out, I'll let you know.
Okay, good. Or her son, like his story. I don't
Yeah.
want to give things
There's
away
so
by
many
talking about that.
threads. I know,
Yeah,
we'll say this. There's
yeah,
so many threads. I mean, I feel like you agree that the story left you feeling satisfied, but
yes,
there's some threads that if I wanted to take on something else, it's available. Right. So I'm just
mhm,
letting that percolate at the back of my head
okay,
right now because I did need to take a break from being, I mean, it was really difficult being in that part of our American history for 3 years. It
yeah,
took me 3 years to work on that book. So I thought the 40s and the 50s would just give me a little bit of a relief, but
yeah. Just for
I'm
your mental
never,
health alone. Yeah,
yes,
like
exactly. But we will see what happens for book 6 or book 7. We'll
7.
just keep it all open.
That'd be so cool. All right. Well, thank you so much for doing this. And gosh, next time you write a book, can we do this again?
Absolutely, absolutely. I can't wait to come back. And
Do you have?
actually, I want
Go
to come
ahead.
in person. Hopefully by then we'll be in person.
We have an author wall, and I would love for you to sign it. So, and it survived renovation so far. So we're hoping it makes it all the way through.
Okay, good.
But okay, so let's see here. I put a link down below if you want to buy The Yellow Wife. If you want to do some further reading on the subject, it's also below. I put your website in there. I think I got everything. If anybody has a question, this is your last chance to ask it. I see Sonia has this experience inspires you to write more historical fiction, which you answered. Hi, Sonia.
Yes. Hi, Sonia. Yes, Sonia. It absolutely has. I mean, I really feel like I've gotten bitten by the historical fiction bug. And what's happening in my body is that I feel charged now to write the stories of women whose stories have been marginalized or blotted out of history. I feel charged to bring their stories to life. And I think me doing it through the lens of fiction just makes it more accessible to people who wouldn't necessarily read a history book.
Yeah.
So we'll see how that goes. That's what I'm feeling right now.
I love it. Okay, so we have copies in stock. You don't have to support us, but please support your favorite local independent bookstore. If you don't have one, Read It Again could be it. I put a link below. We've got another little comment here. Oh, Sonia says thank you. Thank you, Sonia. Okay. I hope everybody enjoys it. Go out and buy The Yellow Wife. It's awesome. Seriously. Best way to spend my day. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much, Kim. This has been so much fun.
Oh my goodness. Okay. Bye. Thank you.
Bye, everyone.